Okay, so good morning, everyone, and welcome to this seminar that I'll be giving to the Sensing the Forest project team. My name's Matt Wilkinson. I'm a research scientist at Forest Research, and my background really is in measuring and monitoring greenhouse gas fluxes of forest ecosystems. But I've been involved with a lot of technological projects and looking at new technologies for monitoring forests over many years, and are really excited to be part of this new Sensing the Forest project. So just to recap, the objectives for work package 1 that I'll be feeding into is to make an on-site and online artistic intervention in a UK-based forest using live scientific data. And from my perspective, it's really that those keywords there are using live scientific data. And what I want to do over the next 15 or 20 minutes or so is just to show you and to demonstrate some of the data streams, how we collect them, why we collect them, and what we use with those data at our long-term forest monitoring site based at Alice Holt Forest in the south of England. And for those involved with the project, we're right up here in task 1, objective 1 of work package 1, all the ones, which is to make an artistic intervention in a UK forest that can be visited on site remotely and uses live scientific data. And the objective that we want to achieve today is highlighted in 1.1, which is really to understand the data and play. So that's what I hope to do. We can just give you a sense of some of the data streams and a little bit of a sense of the place of where we collect those data. So if we just skip back to this wonderful schematic drawing that Anna produced when we were developing the bid, which really summarizes the Sensing the Forest project in one real nice schematic. So from my perspective, up here in work package 1, we're working in this area that I've highlighted by the green area, the green, and it's this sort of rather cartoony figures of some cartoon-based conifer trees and this strange-looking sort of tower thing. It looks like a bit of a pylon. So really, what and for many people in the project, that is as much of a sense of what's going on in Alice Holt Forest as they have at the moment. So what I want to do is just to try and flesh out and give you a sense of what those schematics mean in real life. So if we collapse that image down, and then we can start to put some actual photos and imagery in behind that. So the long-term monitoring site based in Alice Holt Forest that I've managed for many years, it's like a living lab. That's the best analogy I can think of, a sort of forestry in a petri dish. So we're collecting all sorts of environmental and physical environmental information about how the forest is functioning. And really, the focus of the work is to look at the carbon and greenhouse gas balance, the carbon and GHG balance of the forest. So we've got lots of instrumentation and scientific monitoring equipment out in the forest that is enabling us to measure various parameters, and I'll come on to some of those. So some of the data that we collect are manually downloaded. So you can see there's an image here of me collecting some sap flow data. So we've got data loggers that are and instruments that are attached to the trees that are recording various parameters, and we have to go along with a laptop and physically connect to those instruments, download them. But some of the data are collected in a more autonomous way. So we use sort of modern data loggers and computer-based systems. So the sensors are connected to data loggers, which are the network to a PC. So some of the data is collected automatically, and then those data are streamed, are available and captured automatically onto the computer systems that are running down there. And it's these data that we want to use and explore in sensing the forest. The tower is a 26-meter walk-up aluminium scaffolding tower based in the forest. And really, that's just a tool that enables us to get our instruments up above the top of the forest canopy, which is where they need to be to enable and facilitate this research. So for those of you who are perhaps less familiar with Alice Holt Forest, so it's a large mixed forest in the south of England. We're sort of about 25 kilometres north of Portsmouth and about 60 kilometres southwest of London in the busy southeast of England. And it's a multifunctional forest. And what do we mean by that? Well, the primary objective really is timber production. We are involved with the sustainable production of timber. And this is very much a working forest. So at any one time, there'll be large machinery and gangs of harvesters out sustainably harvesting the forest the parts of the forest that have come to the end of their rotation, or there may be thinning operations where foresters selectively take out a number of the trees at different points in the rotation. So at any one time we'll hear machinery going, and of course this is all on a plant. This is managed on a sustainable basis. So there's tree planting, and we're replacing those trees that are being felled and harvested. But Alice Holt is, in addition to being a working forest, it's a really important site for woodland-based recreation, and it's great that we've got some people from the recreation team on this, the recreation team at Alice Holt in this project consortium. Literally hundreds of thousands of visitors every year. Enjoying the benefits that woodland recreation can bring in terms of health and exercise and mental health benefits. So there's a big education and educational outreach and forest recreation aspect to the woodland park, and this really goes on hand in hand with this production forestry, which is a really difficult thing to achieve, but something that the team in Forestry England do really well. But from my perspective, it's also a great place to do science, and that's what I'm bringing to this consortium. So the research that I lead focuses on the left-hand side of this imagery. So we're looking, or we're researching, and we're probing the terrestrial carbon cycle. And how forests and forest soils interact with carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and other greenhouse gas balances. And other greenhouse gases such as nitrous oxide and methane, much more potent gases in terms of their global warming potential, and still it can be influenced by forest operations. That's the world that I'm working in. But what I wanted to do also, because this isn't a science presentation. This is about giving the project team an understanding of the sense, the area, the place we're working in. So this is a wonderful photo of an image that's of Alice Holt Forest and the wider environment, actually stretching down to north of Portsmouth. This map is up it's actually from 1870, and it's mounted in the library of the House of Lords. It captures the forest as it was, as I say, in 1870. And many of those landscape features that we can see in that 1870 map, so pre-Forestry Commission, we can still see in the landscape today. And one of the things I've been working on with colleagues over many years is building up a historical library, some documents that trace the history, particularly of the areas that we've been doing research in for many years. Because the idea of forests are around for a long time. A typical broadleaf oak forest rotation may last 100 years, maybe more. So the way that the landscape has been shaped over many years really influences what we're seeing today. And this is something that I'm keen to draw out in both in my research, and it may be something that we want to explore through this project. So we have a time series of aerial photos. We've got lots of documents tracing the history of Alice Holt Forest from the turn of the 19th century through to the present day, and we've got aerial photos, and what's really exciting and interesting for me is that although we're carrying out world-class leading research these days, currently, there have been people have been carrying out scientific research on these sites for many years. So I think this sense of time, this sense of timelessness, and carrying on the research and building on what's been done before is something that's really interesting and something that I'm quite passionate about. But just focusing in on the current research that I lead, it's really, we can distill it down to four key questions. So how much carbon is there in the forest, and where is that carbon? And what processes determine the changes in carbon stocks and the fluxes? So we can think of carbon in forest in terms of stocks and fluxes. So the stocks will be the carbon that's held in tree trunks or in the soil, in roots, in woody biomass. And the fluxes are the processes by which carbon or carbon dioxide can transfer between those different pools or those different stocks. And we're really interested in looking at both how management influences the balance of those changes in the stocks, and what are the opportunities for forestry to mitigate the net greenhouse gas balances of forests. So the site that we work at extensively out of Forest Research Alice Holt, and that will become the focus for the Sensing the Forest audio streamers and other work, is the Straits Enclosure, which is a 90-hectare block of woodland at the southern end of Alice Holt Forest. And it's been the focus of a much detailed scientific research over many years. So in addition to the carbon and greenhouse gas balance work that I look after, there's lots of other long-term environmental monitoring going on at this site, both in terms of the biodiversity, the nutrient cycling. So it really is can be considered a natural laboratory or a super site for environmental monitoring. And this is just some highlights some of the instruments and some of the kind of environmental parameters that we're recording. So we have this tall tower, which we use this micrometeorological technique called eddy covariance to measure the carbon exchange between the forests and the woodland. But we're also really interested in looking at all sorts of other different processes. So we're measuring how much carbon dioxide is coming from the soils. We're also interested in looking at how phenology, and that's the changes in the timing of the natural it's the science of the natural cycles, the timing of natural cycles can affect forest ecosystem functioning. We've been recording the meteorology at the site since 1998, and we've got a real long-term record of the meteorology at the Alice Holt Research Station, which is only about 5 kilometers from this site. So we can characterize changes in the meteorology over the past 70 or 80 years. And then we've got a whole load of ancillary data that's collected by my forest research colleagues, but also MSc and PhD students over many years. We focus on using the micrometeorological technique called eddy covariance, where we measure very fast changes in atmospheric turbulence and fast changes in carbon dioxide and water vapor concentration in parcels of the air as they roll over the forest. And these data are collected at something like 20 times a second, and from that we get those data are automatically recorded on on a PC. So this just shows an example of, this is like a few seconds worth of data on the carbon dioxide concentration above the forest canopy. And we've got streams and streams of different environmental data that are collected at this high frequency that we're hoping to use and make available to the project. So those high frequency data, something like 20 times a second, and then averaged into half hourly fluxes. And from the half hourly fluxes, we can look at changes in the carbon balance of the forest over longer periods. So I just want you to look at the bottom figure, or the bottom graph in this figure, which shows the net ecosystem productivity in terms of tons of carbon dioxide per hectare per day. So anything below the line in this graph represents a net loss of carbon dioxide from the forest to the atmosphere. And you can see that when the forest is leafless, as it is over the winter, so there's no green leaves to drive photosynthesis, the forest acts as a net source for carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, and it's pumping carbon dioxide out. At some point in the spring, the forest greens up, and the net losses through respiration and the net gains through photosynthesis, the balance of those shifts, and the forest becomes a net sink for carbon dioxide. So it's drawing down carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and that continues over the summer until at some point in the autumn or the early part of winter, the forest reverts back to being a net source for carbon dioxide. And this is what we call the net carbon balance. So my research looks at, this is the net carbon balance in the sort of light purple over many, many years. And we can see there's a lot of interannual variation. So my research as a scientist is looking at what the source of those interannual variations are. And as a scientist, we use lots of different tools. We work with the data. We try and build empirical relationships. We want to look at to try and understand what those drivers are. So whether they're being driven by the meteorology or changes in the management, that's our bread and butter, which is going to be and that's one of the things that's really exciting about sensing the forest, is that we're going to be taking those scientific data but using them in a completely different way. Just to highlight some of the other data that we're collecting at the site, so we've got the meteorology, we've got a whole range of environmental parameters such as wind speed and wind direction. We record the rainfall, but we're also recording parameters underneath or within the soil. So the central figure at the bottom of the central photo on the bottom of this slide just shows some soil moisture and soil temperature probes down to the depth of 1 meter. We're interested in looking at the impacts of management and how management influences the forest carbon balance, and we're also interested in looking at how forest soils, how forest soils are influencing the carbon dioxide balance, the carbon balance at the site. So one of the tools that we use is a soil flux chamber, and that's these white chambers that sit on top of the soil, on the ground, and then carbon dioxide, which is constantly diffusing out of the soil, diffuse into those chambers, and we can use an infrared gas analyzer to measure the carbon dioxide concentration or the increase in carbon dioxide concentration in those soil chambers, and from that we can derive how much carbon dioxide is coming from the soil into the atmosphere. And then we can look at relationships between soil moisture and soil temperature and start to understand what is influencing the forest floor or soil carbon CO2 fluxes. So I mentioned phenology earlier on in my talk, and this is one of the things that I've been looking at for many years. And we've been using camera systems to record changes in the forest canopy over time. So we have several different camera systems that take images of the forest every half hour during daylight hours. So we've got upward facing cameras based on a Raspberry Pi system that we built a few years ago, and we've also got downward facing cameras that take photos, and in an approach that's similar to remote sensing, really. We can use the digital information that's contained within each pixel, the red, the blue, the strength of the red, the blue, and the green channels, to look at, in a quantifiable way, changes in the greenness and therefore changes in the phenology, both over the course of one season, but then over the course of 1 year as the seasons change, but then over the course of many years when looking at the interannual variation in the phenology. So the phenological aspect of this work also ties in really nicely with the carbon balance, because by combining those data, we can look at questions such as how does the influence of spring temperature, which we know is, seasons are, winters are getting warmer, so spring phenological events are happening earlier in the year as the climate changes. So what are the impacts for changes in those phenological signals on the carbon dynamics of the woodland? Okay, and just finally, I just wanted to highlight what the impact that this work is generating. You know, for us as scientists, it's really important that we tell people and we get the data and we convert the data and the information into knowledge and new understanding, and then we actually tell people about it. So much of our data is, and much of our science and our understanding is published both in the scientific literature, but also we make the information relevant to both trade and policy practitioners. But we also do a lot of science outreach, so we host many visitors, both students and other researchers and practitioners from many different institutes to our site, so we can get people out into the forest and explain what we're doing. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up this recording now. Thanks for listening, and if you do have any questions, please do contact either Anna or myself. We'd be really happy to explain more about the work that's going on at Alice Holt, but also the Sensing the Forest project in general. Okay, cheers.